water. It's the essence of all life. We are made of it. It sustains us. It's part of who we are, and yet every day we take it for granted. Our most precious natural resource is under threat like never before.
Water supply and quality is becoming an ever bigger issue in the world. We're going to be looking at fresh, clean water as nearly the oil of the future.
The water supply in Dublin is operating really on the knife edge at the moment.
The statistics about Dublin don't sound like a developed world city. Half the water Dublin cleans and supplies every day leaks away before it reaches a customer.
A few kids were coming home and not wanting to have showers and baths because they were too nervous that the water was going to make them sick.
There are places in the country where if you flush the toilet, it goes into that pipe and goes straight out to sea.
We need proper sewage treatment plants, and we need them now.
You have to have water. End of story.
Every drop of water has been through a plant, or an animal, or a cloud many times. It may cover 71% of our planet's surface, but less than 1% of it is usable by humans. And it's under threat from drought, pollution, and climate change. Things that aren't limited to deserts or developing countries.
In the developed world, where we don't pay attention to water, there is water illiteracy. We have no idea what's required to get the water. If you live in parts of India, if you live in Bangladesh, if you have to walk to get your water every day, you understand the cost of water and the value of water. It's those of us who have it as an instantaneous resource all the time who don't really understand.
In Ireland, our temperate, rainy climate means that water is rarely in short supply. Our island is green because, historically, it has always been wet. These days, no one would consider drinking raw, untreated water. But 160 years ago, that's exactly what Dubliners did.
In the early years of the 19th century, the population of Dublin grew rapidly, and the city at the time was supplied with water from the canals.
The child mortality rate was an enormous problem. The average life expectancy in Dublin City was about 46 years, and most of that was down to water-related illness. The provision of safe drinking water had a massive effect on public health. First major public water supply for Dublin was developed and brought into the city from the Var trade.
The water here comes from the Wicklow Mountains. It's from peaty soil, it's acidic soil, and it comes through granite rock. That would be aggressive to the pipes, and over decades, those pipes deteriorate. Most of the network was built up over the years in towns and cities and country areas.
Ballymore Eustace Water Treatment Plant was set up in the 1930s, due to about 55 to 60% of the demand for the Greater Dublin area. Reservoir area itself is about 5,000 acres, so would have been householders living within that area. So they all had to vacate their houses, and those houses are currently under water.
At Poulafuca Reservoir, water is filtered and disinfected at the treatment plant, then piped to an open reservoir at Stillorgan before reaching homes and businesses.
The water comes here for storage before going into Dublin City. As it leaves the site here, it gets rechlorinated, and we also treat it with ultraviolet light. But we do need to keep the birds off the water. So we have a falconer that comes in every day, and that essentially keeps the birds at bay and helps us to maintain the water quality.
By 2022, the reservoir will be replaced by a new covered water storage facility.
The water network, it's like your blood circulation system, transporting every day 1.7 billion litres of water from the treatment plants all over the country right to customers' taps.
Samples are taken every day, both of the raw water and the final water. Certain basic physical parameters are measured: temperature, colour, turbidity, which is measured, the clarity of the water. But probably the most important are the bacteriological tests.
Failure is anything above 0. So if there's one bad bug in the water, that's too many.
We need to make people understand that the water that they want to use needs to be protected. The fate of our inland waters really depends largely on the way that we treat them and look after them. And we have to think about what is in the catchment and who we are sharing the catchment with.
We're there to look after the river. We're the custodians of the river to protect it for the fish. The animals, if they're alive and doing well in the river, you know you've got a healthy river, clean water. It's incumbent on all of us to protect that and keep that for the future.
Most modern land management is leaky. It leaks nutrients because more than what nature can cope with is applied to maximize production.
You can see that fertilizers and spreading of slurry and the use of sheep tips, and while all these things are necessary, they mightn't always have been done in a way that was sensitive to our watercourses and what they mean to us.
Cryptosporidium, it's a tiny protozoan. It's actually a one-celled animal that can occur in both animal and human waste. And following flooding, you can get issues with drinking water and drinking water systems where you actually have a public health problem there.
Cryptosporidium is a bacterium that causes infection of the stomach and bowel. It can also affect the lungs. It's highly resistant to chlorine, but vulnerable to a much simpler form of treatment: heat.
Boiled water notice is primarily used when a water supply is contaminated. What it does is that it compensates for the fact that the treatment process hasn't worked, isn't working, and so what you do, if you boil the water, it destroys the bacteria, it destroys the parasite.
It's a constant thing that I have to think about from 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. Trying to make sure the kids don't drink water while they're in the shower, in the bath. It's very hard, especially with a 4-year-old, trying to convince him to stop putting the water in his mouth. First thing in the morning is brushing your teeth, is having to fill bottles of water. And then coming home again, drinks for dinner, boiling water for washing salads. It's constant.
It's a luxury to be able to, when you're buying the water, to know you're doing the right thing and you're not going to be sick out of it. But is that luxury there for everybody? I do wonder sometimes.
There's a few issues as well in February when it came out around the school. A few kids were coming home and not wanting to have showers and baths because they were too nervous that the water was going to make them sick. Not just drinking it, they were afraid to touch it at all.
All we have here at this treatment plant is chlorination and fluoridation. The necessary barriers that is needed to protect against Cryptosporidium just isn't provided here. We are looking to provide a 4-log barrier, which essentially means 99.99% removal of Cryptosporidium. At the moment, we have zero protection here.
They did say it may be just for a few weeks and would review it, but it has been continuously reviewed since then.
Uisce Éireann, 6 miles off the Galway coast, is the smallest of the 3 Eireann Islands. For its 260 residents, water shortages have become a part of daily life.
The islanders, they're self-sufficient. They appreciate the value of water conservation because it has a knock-on positive benefit for themselves. You know, they don't have a Tesco down the road that they can go and just buy bottles of water.
The island of Uisce Éireann is gradually moving into the 20th century. At the moment, the islanders are digging trenches through the sheer rock in order to lay pipes for their first ever piped water supply.
Bhí dad a gobar as hain son na Eireann, agus ag son obaráil na Eireann gus na daine agus fása chuir náit stoigur se ribh am na riide. Bhí ansí meige I dulchan cín na Eireann agus chreid se gúnaí, céimfá nach mechan caijan maireachtaile céine ag muintir na Eireann is a bhí a mórthir go pointe. Agus muidir go ag scoil agus I gceirich le tarn, mar tám sin níor aon tarn ar an Eireann. Bhí sé anhiú, níor aon cairn ag tractors tád mar sin. Agus dead answer, boom.
When church is gemacht go ji kan gan Eireann Eireann in the Seer. Agus bhí leis in a ré an saoire lug de man bháil sa lá. Is beidir go te tasí le cúpla bliain sin go te fáil beag an níos tocht níos mó ar an Eireann a daoine strainsearí agus tí saoire scoláirí so tá níos mó béim agus níos mó isceá úsáid freisin.
All commercial started down in Ringsend, as did all the other clubs. My brother was already here coxing, and that's how I came up a few years later, and I started cox. That's Emmett, that's my son. He's won the senior championship of Ireland in Uisce Éireann down in Cork. That's where the championships were held. Have to say the happy moments when the crew was coaching won. The place is alive. The bridge, it's wider than it's long. Once you go under it, it re-echoes. You can hear the catches, taking the water and finishing. Jump, 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 jump.
The River Liffey supplies 85% of Dublin's water. About 40% of the river's flow is purified and pumped to consumers' taps. The problem is, in recent years, demand is outgrowing what the river can supply.
One of the things that's a really sad and disappointing indicator of how bad things are in Dublin is that this summer they reduced the water pressure to their customers overnight to save water. That's not a developed world solution.
We have just about enough water to supply homes and businesses every single day. So it's not really a safe or a sustainable position to say to people, look, there's a 5% risk or a 10% risk that water isn't going to come out of your tap every day.
In the east of the country, there's less rainfall, and therefore the water sources naturally are less abundant or have less water in them. The amount of water we take is at the maximum we can abstract before we start impacting greatly on the natural environment.
We identified the fact that the River Shannon was ultimately the most sustainable and economic source for the Eastern and Midlands region of Ireland, and that particularly taking it from the lower point of the River Shannon, just above the hydropower plant at Eireann. We know that by taking 2% of the average flow in the River Shannon. We can cater for the needs of the Midlands and eastern region of Ireland.
It's about trying to ensure that people have a resilient supply, that they're not afraid that when they turn on the tap they're not going to have any water, and to support the growth of Dublin and the country into the next 50 years.
Sourcing additional water supplies is a priority for our nation, but conserving our treated water is also essential. Every day, clean drinking water drains out of the network through thousands of leaks.
The water system is invisible. It's not just the water that is taken for granted, it's all the work necessary to get people the water.
We are losing about 40% of the water that we produce to leakage, which is at a higher rate than it should be.
If you're treating that water to drinkable levels and then it's going out into the ground, that's treatment costs, that's chemical costs. Water is heavy, so you're pumping water all over the place. If you're pumping 50% of the water into the ground, that's absolutely cash being thrown out the window.
Imagine if half the Guinness that got brewed was thrown in the drain before you could put it in a bottle. People would say that's crazy.
In Great Britain and Ireland, the United States, particularly the East Coast, the older cities, you have the same problem, which is really old systems delivering. And in water mains, they're under pressure, of course, so if there's a crack or a leak, that water is shooting out of the pipe.
When we built these water systems to move water around and distribute water to our homes, we probably didn't think enough about the long-term maintenance of the pipes.
Ireland's water pipe network was first installed over 150 years ago. Despite decades of repair and replacement, much of it is still corroded, cracked and leaking.
We have found leaks in the past that are in very, very small holes in the pipework, and they can create leaks losing up to 20,000, 30,000 litres of water per day.
Water meters tell you where the water's being used. And so if the standard amount is being used over here and then we go another half a kilometer and suddenly a lot of water is being used, but there's nothing there but more homes, then guess what? In the middle, there's a leak.
The reality is that once we put pipes in the ground and bury them, it's hard to find them when they leak. And when they do leak, it's really inconvenient to dig them up.
Very often we have to liaise with the local authority to agree the type of traffic management we need to do. The biggest challenge is actually when you dig down is to pinpoint exactly where the problem is.
We start by using acoustics. Most basic is a listening stick, which is a steel rod. It's the old school way of finding leaks. We listen to valves and fittings around the network, and anything that's making a noise, we follow up then in that area and bring in more leak pinpointing equipment.
You fix a leak, and then it finds the next weakest point on the network and it pops again. So that's quite frustrating.
It can be kind of an ongoing, a domino effect, where you could fix 5 or 6 leaks and you'll have no drop in usage whatsoever.
We need to repair 1,000 leaks a month, and that's just a standstill. So even if we double the budget that we have, or we double the amount of teams on the ground, you know it's going to take years, but you just have to stick at it.
The only time I can imagine going after every leak is if you're in a terrible water scarcity problem, in which case every drop's value goes so high. But if you hit those moments where some of these occasions are so expensive to fix that the cost-benefit analysis is way out of whack, I would go to the ratepayer and say, I hate having a leak, but I'd rather not use your money that way.
If we're going back and we're patching up a pipe on the same road day in, day out, that makes no sense. It's costing us too much money, it's disrupting the public too much, and it makes more sense to replace that pipe.
Ireland's coastline. Monumental. Spectacular. Unique. Shaped by millions of years of rainfall and erosion, it's a national treasure. But one with a hidden story.
There are 38 locations around the country that raw sewage is being discharged into the environment, and that covers the wastewater from about 88,000 people, so it's very significant. There has been a reduction in the number of discharges.
We historically believed you could just put the waste into the rivers, into the sea, and it wasn't a problem. All waste should be treated before it's put back into the sea.
I was born and reared here in this village. This was a sleepy little village with a beautiful coastline, so pure and so perfect. It was where we swam, it's where we fished.
You have a main sewage pipe running through the main street of Liscannor, and then it was coming to a small holding tank just at the edge of the sea. And due to many people visiting the area, the holding tank couldn't hold it all, so it backed up. And not only had you in Main Street it coming out the manholes, but also there was a hole in the pipe between the holding tank and the sea that actually caused a geyser of human excrement to rise up.
3 officials came out from the county council and it blew into the air 22 feet. That shows you the pollution, the pressure that's going into the bay all the time.
I have a lot of friends who are surfers, so one of them was really sick at the time and he wasn't sure why, and then I kind of joined the dots and was like, wow, this is actually a really serious issue.
Bluntly speaking, people were swimming in sewage. They do ingest it and they do get those diseases.
We would see a number of people on a regular basis who do come in with infectious illnesses related to the stomach and small bowel, and frequently we would see ear infections as well.
I surfed actually behind a pier in Liscannor. There's a storm wave there, and just that night I spent like 12 hours in my toilet, sick. And my doctor then confirmed it 2 days later that I had E. coli poisoning, and I didn't even realise that there was raw sewage running into the water there. And it's just not on.
1,500 wheelie bins of raw sewage is being discharged into Liscannor Bay twice a day, every single day. So this is a problem for the health of the marine environment, also for swimmers and surfers.
It's lighted into the tunnel and will ensure in the future that Liscannor Bay returns to what I remember as a child and how beautiful it was.
Cork Harbour, at the mouth of the River Lee, has been a thriving port for centuries. Cove was the last port of call for the RMS Titanic before it set out across the Atlantic on its doomed maiden voyage.
This was the natural position for a transatlantic liners. So all of the transatlantic liners between Liverpool and New York or Southampton and New York stopped at Cove. Cork Harbour is reported to be the second most beautiful natural harbour in the world. But it's well known that the effluent, raw effluent, is going into the harbour.
When you're training long distance, you're swimming head down, you might feed every hour, that's the only time you'll talk to people. It can be cold, and swimming in the winter certainly is definitely cold, but it makes you feel alive in a way that the pool never does. I moved to Cove about 1.5 years ago, and I bought my house because I can see the water right from my bedroom window. The day I actually went to view my house, there was a seal that I saw from the window, and that just absolutely made up my mind that, yeah, this is the place for me. Right below my bedroom window, there's a sewage pipe, and as of now, there is actively sewage going out into the water through that pipe, and I can't swim there.
If there's magic on this earth, it's contained in water. You know, after going for a long swim in the sea, your body feels just fantastic. But you realise then after a while that your mind feels so much better as well. There's just something magic about it. I think it would be fantastic that people didn't need to have this knowledge of where the outfall pipes are. If people could just go and say, there's nice water, I wonder what it's like to swim there, I'm going to go in for a swim. So a very simple solution to this is gather up the sewage and then pump it to a treatment plant and discharge it to sea. So what we did was we built it in reverse. We built the treatment plant first so that there was always somewhere for the sewage to go. And then using a drilled crossing to go under the estuary, like really deep, 30 metres deep under the estuary, so that we can bring the sewage from here over to the treatment plant in Shan Valley. So we'd have gone from having an equivalent of the amount of sewage that would fill 40,000 wheelie bins at the start, and we'll have that down to zero. So it'll take about 2 years for the harbour to regenerate, but you're going to start seeing an immediate difference in things like sewage litter because it's not going to be going straight into the harbour anymore.
I just love getting up in the morning, watching the sun going up when I'm out in my boat, hauling pots. I just love it. I have some memories. We literally were able to go in to the water and kick the fish up the strand. Compare that to this year, and it's the worst year anybody has ever witnessed. Baby wipes, they're having a huge, huge impact. People are flushing them and they're almost indestructible. Any ropes that are in the water, it's like they have hands. You know, if they touch a rope, they're onto it, and you have to actually tear them off it. Plastic is our greatest friend, but our greatest enemy. It's almost indestructible. If you dump plastic, it's there for certainly a lot longer than you're going to live.
It's normal that if people find a dead whale, they are going to report it, a dead dolphin. But if they find a seabird, they think it's so common that they don't report it. And then we have all these birds dying and no one knows why. So I look at all the measurements and try to infer the cause of death. I look at the organ health of these birds and try to find out why they died.
So you have a big piece of plastic here, broken down from something bigger.
The same way that plastic bags remind birds of prey like jellyfish, baby wipes could remind them of other type of prey. They could get confused thinking baby wipes or wipes floating at sea would be other types of prey. And these wipes, most of them, even though they look like a natural fabric, they are actually made of fibers of plastic. So they are definitely becoming accessible for birds or other wildlife to ingest.
If people want to use baby wipes, then put them into the rubbish bin, you know. Don't flush them down the loo. Same with the cotton buds. I see that everywhere. Until something on a higher level is done in relation to plastics and all that stuff and all the other problems that we have, then this is as much as we can do.
If you think about it, if you pick up a piece of plastic and put it into a bag and bring it home, that's a bit of plastic that's not going to end up in the sea. And maybe that's a bit of plastic that's going to get caught in a bird's beak.
It was designed for 1.64
million population equivalent, and what's actually coming in the door at the moment is about 1.9 million population equivalent. So it is really working very hard to treat the sewage that is coming in.
Ringsend Treatment Plant processes 40% of the country's public wastewater. Here, debris, fats, oil and grease are removed from the wastewater before undergoing treatment. Once, the solid waste left behind was simply disposed of. These days, it's become a valuable asset.
The material that remains in the wastewater, it is no longer a waste. It forms sludges, and these can be digested on the works, creating valuable fertilizer and creating gas through the digestion process that can create up to 4 megawatts of power from burning that biogas. So that's as much power as maybe would power a small to medium-sized town in Ireland.
With the plant operating at 16% over capacity, some nutrients in the incoming sewage are passing through the process. The solution is a major upgrade to increase the plant's capacity on a phased basis from now until 2025.
When we have this built, it will certainly improve the quality of the effluent coming out.
There has been historical underinvestment in our drinking water and our wastewater infrastructure over the years. So we're playing catch up really on a long period of underinvestment.
Is part of a system. So when we look at challenges our country is facing, and you look at things like housing supply, you can't invest in one area and not be cognizant of the level of investment that you need to make in other areas like transport and water and electricity.
Massive investments required in water and wastewater treatment. So our key function really is to drive inefficient costs out, while at the same time is to protect the public interest.
How Ireland manages its wastewater is often dictated by the lie of the land. Flat plains, hilly ground, coastal terrain. Each area requires its own unique solution. Sometimes treating wastewater relies on advanced technology. Other times, nature itself can be harnessed to do the job.
Wherever water slows down on its journey to the sea, a wetland may form. How these systems work is nicely demonstrated by looking at a small wetland system for effluents from a single house. The water comes from the house to a collection point and then flows to the first cell, then flows to the next cell. Transpiration from the plants reduces the water quantity.
Here in County Waterford, a constructed wetland treats all the wastewater from the local village of Dunhill.
It's a self-sustaining system, so it doesn't need any electricity or any pumping, and there's no moving parts, so it's very low in maintenance. Benefits to the community is it's keeping their river clean, that's the main benefit, and it also has the add-on benefit of being a beautiful natural environment.
Historically, Ireland's climate has been defined by mild weather, plenty of rainfall, and an absence of extreme temperatures. But with climate change, the future of a reliable water supply is less certain. In recent years, water restrictions have become a reality, which can be hard for people to understand in one of the wettest countries in Europe.
There's been this remarkable wave of stories about all these incredible, wonderful archaeological discoveries in Ireland because the ground is so dry that you can see ancient settlements. We enjoy reading about those discoveries and the archaeologists are delighted. But again, there's a message there. And the message is, maybe Ireland is changing.
There were 2 storms in quick succession, Emma and Ophelia, and what we found is that there was this massive freeze event, so a load of our pipes burst, and that meant that loads of people were out of water. And then when we tried to get the water back to people, because it was out for a while, we had airlocks, which means the water physically couldn't get through the pipe.
When we think about past climate variability and even indeed future climate change, that will affect the availability of water resources. So it's crucial that we build the resilience of water supply systems. And building the resilience essentially means being able to maintain function during extreme events.
Currently, the water level in the lake is quite low, and this is a result of the very good summer we had and the lack of rainfall over the whole summer period.
The drought this summer was quite severe and quite prolonged. It went on for 7 or 8 weeks, really, you know. The cows during the hot weather would drink between 60 and 100 litres a day each. So if you don't have it, it's a big problem.
When I growing up, we had no running water. We had to draw water from the boyne and bring it up on a horse and cart and then give it to cattle.
Some of my friends have had wells, maybe older wells that were shallow, 70 or 80 feet, and they've gone dry with the water table being so low after the drought. And they've had to bore new ones to get their supply up and running again.
The water temperature went much higher than it would normally. 18 degrees would be a maximum summer temperature normally, but this year in the Blackwater it was 24 degrees in places. And getting up to that temperature, salmon and trout can't even breathe under the water. There's so little oxygen.
The general trend is that the wet places become wetter and the dry places become drier. Adding on top of that, places that are struggling now to have enough water are going to find that's a little more challenging. And places that are struggling with too much water from storms are likely to experience more severe storms that are going to tax their ability to prevent floods.
Water is the fire of life, and without water, we can't have life. So it's beholding on us to have water of quality and in quantity to sustain our existence. Water supply and quality is becoming an ever bigger issue in the world.
There are lots of companies that have started to take this seriously because they see water as a risk to their ability to do business and to deliver the products that their customers want.
Well, did you know that there are some people who put the wrong things down the toilet? Yeah. There are some silly billies who keep forgetting. Did you know that?
Green Schools is an environmental education programme and it's international. We run water workshops. It's about the students doing all the work and really trying to empower themselves and then to spread the message back into their schools and into their homes.
People in like places like Africa, I mean, they like have to go and collect their water, and it's not even that nice. Like they have to get from the river, and it's like, and it's sometimes all mucky and stuff. So you wouldn't like want to taste it at all. But if you wanted to survive, you just have to go with it.
You might spend €2.50 on a bottle of water, which is 1 litre. You know, so you assign a value to it because you're willing to pay €2.50 for it, and it's well worth it because then you drink it and you're not thirsty, so you have an immediate impact of that €2.50. But when you're at home and you're not thinking with that head on, it seems more disposable.
not to run the taps for drinks, just to take the first drink from the tap. Short showers, that's another one, not too long in the shower. That's for Dad as well. What's your favourite phrase about the toilet?
Oh, yeah, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down.
Humans are naturally drawn to water and to the ocean. It's a source of well-being, calming, and energizing.
I'm over 60, like. I still get butterflies in my stomach and I'm going, I wonder what it's going to be like. And just when you arrive and then see it, it's going to go, wow.
Dad has kind of given a lot of hope to a lot of surfers around the area because they realise they can keep doing it for a long time to come. And he's still surfing probably better than quite a few people out in the water. So it's just a complete lifelong passion for him, and it's something that he's then passed on to us as well.
We always have had this sea connection, and for me, my father's always been emphasising the importance that that's the school of life.
We met really through the ocean. When the girls were born, the ocean was just a part of all of our lives. Like everything around here is about water.
A lot of people would be familiar with the Blue Flag. You could go to a Blue Flag beach anywhere around the world. But with the Green Coast Award, because we realised in Ireland we have so many stunning rural beaches that if we were to put that infrastructure in, would be destroyed, but also deserve to be celebrated because they are such excellent water quality and so well looked after.
I mean, the evidence does show it has a profound psychological effect as well as physical when we're in the sea, which is perhaps no surprise. I mean, as human beings, we have, I feel, that innate connection with water. It's how we first experience life in the womb, that feeling of being suspended, of not having to fight gravity anymore. And that memory exists in all of us.
By 2050, the UN predicts that around half the world's population will suffer from clean water scarcity. Our future and the future of the water we use are inextricably linked. Securing them both will require more than just investment. What we need is awareness and a new respect for a precious resource we've taken for granted far too long.
The majority of people, all they do is open the tap and they have water. They don't realise how valuable it is.
If we don't look after our water resources, we will pay for it in our health and well-being.
We've certainly got enough smart people, but we need to be realistic about what's happening and to change.
There's no one single bullet in terms of a solution. It's about a combination of measures.
We cannot, as engineers, decide that we're going to impose a solution. And the best projects and the ones that have had the best delivery are the ones really who've worked with the communities.
The imagination that people have, the technologies that have developed, and the will to solve this problem, if we continuously see the opportunity to improve, we're going to move to a better place.
It's an ongoing process, but I believe that it will happen.
There's a huge opportunity in somewhere like Ireland to shift our awareness and perspective on how we value how important water is in our everyday lives.